Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. Our guest today is the Honourable Maneka Gandhi from India. Menka, welcome to our show. And before I introduce you formally, I want to share with our podcast viewers a very touching story. One day you invited me to your beautiful home for lunch in Delhi, and there was this dog by your side, and you had told me the story. In fact, I saw him twice. The first time I saw him, you told me he was covered in boils. He had a jacket on, and he was found in a green dumpster. Someone had thrown him into the green dumpster to die. I just couldn't believe it, right? And so he was abandoned and thrown into this green garbage bin. But you, Menka, and your People for Animals team rescued him, and you fixed him up. And then the next time I saw him, when we had lunch, he was right beside your feet. He wouldn't abandon you because you didn't abandon him, right? He was an incredible dog. And so this is the introduction to all of our podcast guests here who, this is what Maneka Gandhi is. This is what her heart is. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about her. She is one of the most remarkable people that I know. She's an environmentalist and animal rights leader in India. She's chairperson for People for Animals. Go and look it up online. And she's also an Indian politician, having held numerous positions in government, including environment minister, is also an Indian politician, having held numerous positions in government, including environment minister, union minister for social justice and empowerment, and union minister of women and child development. She's won numerous awards internationally and has written many books, including one day when I was visiting her, she showed me the first animal laws book of India. I believe there's a second version now, but this one was this thick. And Menka, I think you're probably the first country in the world to have such a book, right, of animal laws, right? Yeah.
We are also the first country in the world to teach animal law in law universities, which is something we got done 8 years ago. Yes.
Wow, that is just phenomenal. So one of the things I wanted to, how I wanted to introduce you was, you are the chairperson for People for Animals, but let's talk about who People for Animals really is. You started it in 1994, and it's the largest non-governmental animal welfare organization, right? With a national network, and the numbers may have changed, so please correct me, but 26 hospitals, is it 200 locations now? Something like that, or something like that? 60 mobile units and many, many members. And what PFA does is they rescue and rehabilitate sick and needy animals, just as I opened with the story about the little guy with the boils, right? And they have set up and they've run shelters, ambulance services, sterilization programs, treatment camps, and disaster rescue missions for animals. And as she just said, a lot of it has to do with education, which you folks are really good at, right? You fight cases in court, you lobby on animal issues in Parliament. And I think you told us before we even went on air that you're the only animal organization that will take individual complaints, right? Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, in my office, we have two different offices. The one office just does major legal work. We have about 70 cases in Parliament. In the courts, from the lowest to the highest court. And the other office also does policy management, which is like issues with the railway ministry, or if we have something wrong with a particular film that's come out and we need film censorship or whatever. That office deals with policy and cases. And my office, where I sit, deals with individual cases, because I firmly believe that if you solve one individual's problem, you will change about 500 people, because that person will talk, will become more compassionate, and he becomes braver. Yeah. Now, we have thousands of people go out and feed animals on the road every day.
Wow.
But we also have an equivalent lobby of people who come and hit them, or people who are mean to them because they don't want animals to be rescued or fed or anything, and they get very violent.
Yeah.
So we are sitting in this office, there are about 6 people, and they then take care of individual problems. So if somebody says, my neighbor every day is screaming and shouting because I feed a dog on the street, then we talk to the police, we talk to the neighbor, we sort it out.
Okay.
We specially deal with what is known as societies. Each building has a residents welfare society or association. Now, this residents welfare association is really made of usually retired people who have nothing better to do, who want some power, who want to be special. And so they stand for election. And then because they can't do anything, they can't solve electricity problems, they can't solve the road problems, but they can do something about the dogs or the cats. So they are mean to them. And they prevent people who own dogs from going out, or they'll make silly rules like two dogs only per flat, or they'll say you can't go out at this hour, or you can't use the lift. They just want to pick on somebody. So because how else will they prove that they're powerful? So we sort out those issues building by building, building by building. So we get about 400 to 500 complaints a day. And normally by the end of the day, we've sorted out a couple of hundred.
I was fascinated by the fact that you mentioned earlier that you were fighting about 70 cases in the High Court, and that you go to court for the elephants. I mean, that's a wow! And that I read that around 2,000 elephants die every year in India. So why do they die? What's the problem?
Well, they're run over by trains. They're shot by poachers. They die of starvation. They are usually die because they're kept by people who own temples, and then they're kept there to beg, or they're hired out for festivals, and then they die because that's not what they're supposed to be doing. And they're usually kept bound, and they're beaten every day by the temple people. Every day.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
A lot of them die during the beatings.
Oh, I always want to cry when I hear you say that, which kind of leads me to something I read on the People for Animals website, and it was about compassion without action is evil. Tell us more about that.
No, for instance, I just finished dealing with an email which said, we called you about this dog which had blood coming out of its mouth. You have rescued it, but you have not informed us about how he is. So I've written back saying, you did nothing for the dog. When we went to rescue it, you didn't even give 1 rupee for its treatment. You have not been to see that dog. How dare you even ask whether it's alive or dead?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Compassion without action is rubbish. It's worse than evil.
Yeah.
And lots of people think that they've done their duty by simply phoning us and making us do the work. But if you ask them, do you think you could donate? Then they will say, but it doesn't belong to me. I said, everything belongs to me, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So People for Animals, from what I know, and I've known you for years, is really a leader in the world for animal welfare. I'd like to go back a little bit in time and ask you what drove you to start it. 1994, that's a long time ago. What drove you to start PFA?
Actually, it started much earlier. I mean, I built India's first animal hospital in 1980.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's named after my husband, because when he died, the money he left me, we made that hospital. So it's called the Sanjay Gandhi Animal Care Center. And then from there, we started giving money to other centers to start. For instance, Friendicos was started by me. That's also a big one. And we helped shelters all over. But I was always doing it. But I didn't actually make a registered organization. And then, my friends got together and they said, why don't you make an official organization? So then they did. And it was called People for Animals. And I learned the name was really a copy of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals,
Right
because they
on.
were doing a good
Yes.
job in America. And I had gone to America and learned about animal management, not just making shelters and stuff, but how many things we could do. So I came back and then we started this group. And then it became, we became very well known because I used to run India's only, I think the world's only TV show on animals called Heads and Tails, which was a very brutal show. But, we ran it for 5 years on the only TV station that there was in India called Doordarshan. And it was once a week, and it would show you how a chicken becomes a chicken sandwich. So it was about killing, and it was about violence, and they allowed us to show it. And even now I meet hundreds of people who say we became vegetarian after watching that show. Because you really have to show things. There's no point, sliding around, pretending everything's okay. So every week we showed 2 bad things and 2 good things. And the movement then, we started getting letters and people became members. Then we had another talk show on TV, on Star TV, called Meneka's Ark, where we interviewed people who were doing good things or fascinating things with animals. And that also did okay. So, and then I was writing a column for 13 newspapers. So that also spread the word. So we actually got off the ground fairly quickly. And we started building shelters. As soon as we'd get land somewhere, we'd build it. So every year we build 1 or 2 shelters.
Wow. That's very, very impressive. Yeah.
So we then, people started coming and working, and we get a whole lot of free volunteers who come in called interns. And one of the interns started writing this animal laws book because nobody knew the law. So one of the things we do is we train police people and we train judges, because we're in court so much, and really the judiciary and the police know nothing about animals. So we train them. So in order to train them, we started this book. In fact, we have just finished getting a book which we've written, called the IO's Handbook, which is the Investigation Officer's Handbook. Because when a crime happens on animals, they don't even know how to investigate. So we've made the handbook for them, and we're giving it to every police station across India, which will be many, many thousand or 100,000.
Yeah. Wow.
So we do that all the time. We don't do education of children and things because that's a waste of time. Children have no power. I'd much rather train parents and let them train children. So, and then we stress a lot on the vegan movement. We, for us, everything is one. We food animals, slaughterhouses, vegan movement, environmental management, everything becomes one.
For sure. One story I remember you telling me, well, first of all, I want to say that yesterday I was doing some research, and I don't know what the exact number is, but between 1 and 2 billion animals are slaughtered every year for the leather industry.
Yeah.
Just for the leather industry. And then I remember a story you told me that, what the skin from the cows, and they're very brutal to these cows as well, are put in these huge vats of acid, right? And then these men, maybe women, they have to wade through this acid to make the pelt, the hide softer. And of course, what did you say, that the human beings who work in that industry live for 2 years or something?
No, they all get a form of skin cancer. And many of them die, and they're all the poorest of the poor. It isn't so much acid as acidic chemicals, that they have to stand with. But it's also ruined our main river, the Ganges. And this leather is just the end result. Most of our cows are killed for leather, not for meat.
Oh my God.
Remember, India, which is supposed to be an ahimsa country, non-violent, we have the largest meat export in the world. Yeah. That in itself is a big problem.
Yes.
And all our meat exporting companies are actually owned by foreigners. So we get nothing out of it because they refuse to pay us any taxes. They refuse to do anything. So our forests are getting destroyed. Our water is getting used by all these huge meat grazing animals who we don't have, we have no meat grazing land. So they all go into our forests.
Right.
And so we're losing 1 to 2 to 3% of our forests every year because of these meat grazing animals, which are given to foreign companies who don't pay me anything. So I don't understand the reason for it even.
Yeah.
And all the countries surrounding us think that we are the biggest idiots going because, for instance, Sri Lanka closed down its slaughterhouses and said, why should we ruin our lands when we can get the meat in from India?
Yeah.
Can anybody out there hear me? Hear me?